and all this shit. And then there was the major bridge collapse over the Ohio River, and a lot of people, like, people were killed, people were missing. It was a big disaster. So they deemed, like, the Mothman as, like, this harbinger of bad omens. And apparently, like, there's, like, a dynamite site or, like, a storage facility that they say he lives in, like, in town. And it's not safe to go there. There have been reports of people fucking around down there, and then, like, weird shit starts following them home, and things start happening. Like, it's just a good ghost story. But the whole town, because it's a big cryptid thing, everyone, like, I mean, they have a whole museum with all the original, you know, investigative reports and pictures and pieces of the old bridge. And then, like, they have a giant statue, a steel statue of the Mothman, and it's, like, fucking shiny. And, like, everyone wants to, like, I got pictures with it. Like, it's a big pull. It's a big draw. And they sell everything. The whole town, basically, is just Mothman now. Like,
was there a movie?
Yes, there was a Mothman Prophecies that's based loosely off of, and they have some of the memorabilia from the movie also at the museum. They have, like, a whole corner of the movie props and shit that they have, and posters and everything.
So at this time of year, that place gets a lot of traffic, huh?
There is a Mothman festival at some point in the year. It was not this weekend, though, while we were there, thank God, because, like, it's a small town, and it gets busy. There were a lot of Ohio plates, because it's right there. So there's a lot of people traveling through. Everyone's always taking, like, there's a line basically to take selfies with the Mothman statue. Like, it's a big draw.
Yeah.
But it wasn't too bad, and it was a good day. It was like 70 outside, but it was really humid because it was raining in Ohio for most of the drive, and it was like a 3-hour trip.
Oh yeah.
So we get out, and it's muggy as fuck. My hair starts doing all sorts of weird shit. Melissa's hair's going crazy because she's naturally curly. Like, it was just, I just don't feel like wearing the headphones, because when I wear it with my glasses, it, like, puts so much pressure on my fucking head. It's annoying.
Did you take Rory with you?
No, she stayed the night at her grandma's because her and her grandma are, like, besties, and it's my mother-in-law who watched her. But, like, during the summer, Rory stays with her almost every single day, and now that she's in school, her big thing is she wants to have a sleepover every Friday night at grandma's.
Oh yeah.
So she stayed the night at Pam's, and then Alan went and grabbed her when he was done with work today. And then they hung out, and then we didn't get back. It was after 5. So we got down there at noon. We kind of toured everything we wanted to see within 2.5 hours, and then we booked it back home because we were hitting traffic in Columbus, and it was pain.
Oh, okay. Now, Ohio has a lot of rural areas, a lot of forest. Have there been Sasquatch sightings over the years there?
Absolutely. So we actually have a Bigfoot convention in Salt Fork, which is down south where we were, because it's all hills and it's uninhabited and it's beautiful. But yeah, that's Bigfoot country down there. And then they also have locally, we have a Pleasant Hill Lake, which is, like, attached to a dam, and apparently there were frogman sightings there. They call it the Loveland Frogmen, and it's, like, frog people, like 3-foot tall frogs, like bipedal fucking weird frog things that someone allegedly saw one night, and no one's ever, but it was such a weird story, everyone, like, draws to it. Those are the two big ones. There's even been reports of Bigfoot sightings in Ashland, which is like 20 minutes away from me, and that is farm country.
But how could he exist if a creature is that big and that strong? How could it exist in such small numbers? Because, I mean, he could take on a grizzly bear in a fight, right? So obviously there wouldn't be much of a threat to him. So it's got to be completely urban legend. That's my opinion anyway. But
I like the idea that it exists because, I mean, there's a lot of uninhabited areas here in Ohio. And for a long time, even big cat sightings have been, like, myth. Like, oh, people have seen panthers and shit. Well, now they're starting to see that. They're starting to see them more. And it's like, maybe it's not such a legend.
At least a mountain lion, there's got to be a few of those around.
There are mountain lions, but there's also panthers.
You got panthers up there now?
Actual black cats, yes. There's not many sightings, but they have been seen. And
Yeah.
they've been caught on trail cams, and there's eyewitness accounts and stuff like that. Like, it's becoming more commonplace than we realize.
And
And I think that, you know,
and wild boars are supposed to become a new threat in America now. They're encouraging people to kill the wild pigs because they're violent, you know.
yeah, and they got those tusks. Like, I wouldn't want to
Oh
fuck
yeah.
with that.
Well, the tusks go up into their brain and actually make them go crazy, and they start acting really psychotic. So
No, thank
I
you.
get. I mean, I guess you would too. I mean, if you had a horn going into your brain, you know, something would go.
Slowly lobotomizing yourself. No, thank you.
Yeah. Right. Speaking of lobotomizing yourself, I've been recording us since you started talking about the Moth Man.
I saw that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't want to.
Oh, yeah. So this is the Halloween edition of the True Crime News, and we're gonna go from, well, one thing that you would think would just be an urban myth, but it's actually, science is saying that it's actually a possibility now, are zombies. I mean, certainly not in the version like Night of the Living Dead. Obviously, they're not going around looking for people's brains to eat, but they're saying it can exist in some form. Jeffrey Dahmer tried to create his own zombies, as you would know. Took muriatic acid, drilled a hole in the guy's skull, poured the acid in, and his logic was, I'll suspend most of his functions, but he'll still be alive, and then I can have sex with his inanimate body. But of course, it never worked, because when you pour acid on someone's brain, they're most likely just going to die, and that is what happened. So I have this article by Scientific American about real life zombies. So the headline says, zombie takeover in science fiction, right? Well, it turns out some zombies already exist in nature, and life after brain death might not be so far-fetched. Maybe the zombie apocalypse starts with a virus or a supernatural event. Maybe the resulting zombies can move quickly but are more easily incapacitated, or maybe they're slow and can be only taken out by a blow to the brain. Are these zombies cunning, or are they awkward and uncoordinated, as I would argue any proper zombie must be? Zombie lore may give us a lot of variety, but one thing every zombie scenario has in common is reanimation of the body after death. The body's movements are slave to a brain that is no longer in control. But what do these differences matter? It's all just science fictional horror movie fodder, right? Well, we've previously discussed scientific studies on how fast a zombie-like virus could spread, as well as neurobehavioral disorders in humans that leave their sufferers mimicking some key zombie traits. And it turns out science has even more to say about zombies. Zombie carpenter ants. In the Brazilian jungle, at a height of just about 10 inches on the ground, carpenter ants can be found with their jaws permanently locked on a leaf, frozen in a never-ending dance as an alien stalk grows through their head. These ants are the victims of, I don't know if I'm going to pronounce this correctly, Ophiocordyceps unilateralis, also known as the zombie ant fungus. The fungus first enters an ant's bloodstream as single cells, but those cells soon begin copying themselves and, importantly, building connections so that those individual cells can share nutrients. These connections set the fungus apart from other fungi that simply kill off their host and eventually form networks that wrap around the ant's muscles. So ants can become zombies. I'm not going to read the rest of that part of the article.
Did you ever watch The Last of Us or play the video game?
I haven't.
It's also a cordyceps zombie scenario there too. Isn't nature terrifying?
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, and then in Haiti they create zombies. Allegedly they figured out a way to make you brain dead but keep your body alive.
Wasn't that the concept of the serpent in the rainbow?
I guess so.
It was a book and a movie. long time ago, and they were talking about, I think they talked on the Haitian Zombies, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong. I haven't checked that. So,
Well, I've experienced tissue death because I have diabetes and I watched part of my toe turn black and self amputate. So I had an experience where part of me died and came off, and it's fucked up. I mean, the only thing is, I don't know if your brain could do it because, I mean, that controls everything.
normally when there's cell damage and cell death in the brain, you can't come back from that. Because, with my line of work, we explain that drugs and alcohol, can cause cell damage or cell death. And, unlike skin and other things that we have, it never comes back. So you lose it, it's gone forever.
Well, I mean, and maybe someone who was like a vegetable is it, maybe that could be argued is a zombie, right? If they're not thinking, the body's not moving, they're just inanimate, you know?
It's in like an autopilot where, everything's working for the person to keep them in that stable condition, even though the body can't handle it.
Yeah, like that Star Trek character from the original series, the guy it was like in the first episode or something, he was in a machine. He didn't even move his eyebrows. He was like Stephen Hawking. Stephen Hawking was kind of a zombie. Well, kind of a reverse zombie, I guess, wasn't he? The brain was active. The brain and his tongue were active, but everything else was dead, right? So.
Oh my God. I can't believe you brought him into this. Leave Stephen Hawking alone. Jesus Christ. Okay, so were you gonna say something?
No. So what do you think? Is it possible to create zombies? Do you think someone's going to figure that out in the future?
I mean, if they already haven't figured it out and they're just not telling us.
Because there's all these ethical questions that come up with like genetic engineering, the designing of human beings, the alteration of genes. They could create people who are almost like robots, and they could be like zombies. Make better employees that way.
I mean, I know it's naturally occurring, especially on an insect level, where I've seen different things, fungi and other parasitic, insects or whatever it is that will take over the host and essentially cause them to be a fucking zombie version of themselves. I wouldn't put it past it, but
Yeah.
I mean, I it's one of those, like, until we see it, I have no idea. I mean,
Yeah,
it's possible.
That's some of the genius that you encounter in nature. It's like there are plants and animals that have invented substances that can just go right to your nervous system and like knock it right out. Whereas we haven't. I mean, I'm sure human scientists can invent stuff like that, but usually they have to go to nature to get it first to like reverse engineer it.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, it's terrifying to think because a lot of these crimes against humanity come up when you consider the ethical questions, the kind of warfare that's coming up for humanity in the distant future. Yeah, like a pandemic maybe that does strike you neurologically, you know. You had COVID. Did it affect your brain or just your sinuses?
Not that I'm aware of. When I had it, it was mainly, I honestly just thought it was a really bad sinus infection. And the big difference was when I get sinus infections normally, I don't get a fever with them. So with this, I had a decent fever, and that's how I knew something was up. And then after like that initial week of having the symptoms of like a normal sinus infection where it was like half congestion, half I couldn't keep fluids from exiting my face, it kind of switched up. So then it was like, well, the fever would eventually break, but then I also had vertigo, which I'd never had before. And that was really trippy. And then when the vertigo subsided, I would get headaches, like bad headaches. And basically the only way I could get rid of them was to just sleep.
Did you get
And then I did lose my sense of smell for about a week and a half. That was probably the hardest thing because you don't realize how connected your body is until you're going like 12, 13, 14 hours and you're like, oh shit, I haven't eaten anything because you're not hungry because you can't smell anything.
Yeah.
And then it's like you're basically just eating just to survive, but then it's like nothing tastes good. Textures are off because you don't have the flavors to go along with it. As far as the brain goes, brain's fine.
What did you
I
experience?
mean, as far as I know, I haven't looked at it or had scans done on it recently. So as far as I'm aware, everything's all good up top. But
Did you feel any depression during that time? 'Cause getting
no.
sick can cause you to experience that.
No, because no. I've had worse illnesses, to be honest, than COVID. Not saying that COVID isn't bad, because everyone got it differently. Some
Well,
people got it way more seriously than I did. Others got it more mildly. I had it about a year after the initial pandemic started. So by that point, I was having the second mutation of COVID.
oh,
But I'd had other illnesses where, when I was younger, I actually there's 2 strains of hand, foot, and mouth disease. And I don't know how it happened. I caught both of them at the same time. And that I had to be quarantined for about a month. And I was very, very, very sick. And of course, it happened right before spring break. So all of my spring was just fucking stuck indoors. And I had really bad arthritis. So I couldn't even cut with scissors. So I couldn't do shit. I was just basically living off Go-Gurts and watching TV because everything hurt. I was just not feeling well. I had spots. I was just a mess. And it was like when I was 12. So it was like, they say the older you get when you have that, it's kind of like the equivalent of adults getting chicken pox. It fucks you up.
damn.
So I still have mild residual arthritis in my knees as a result. So I can tell you when the weather's going to change.
Oh, damn. And you're too young to have arthritis.
It happens, and it's manageable. So it's not, I'm not letting it phase me. It's fine. I know when it's going to rain. I know when it's going to snow. I know when the humidity changes. I'm good. I'm like a walking barometer. You got to stay positive.
Yeah, well, that's good then. All right, so what's your first story?
So I focus solely on unsolved murder mysteries because history's full of them. We're starting off with my absolute favorite. This story has always weirded me out ever since the first time I heard it, and it's been a long time. So it is about the Hinterkaifeck murders. Have you heard of these?
I have not.
Story time. Okay, so the Hinterkaifeck murders occurred on March 31st in 1922.
My birthday.
When 6 inhabitants of a small Bavarian farmstead, which is about 70 kilometers north of Munich, Germany, were murdered by an unknown assailant. The 6 victims were basically a family and the maid who lived in the household. They were all found struck dead with a pickaxe or a grub axe. They call it a mattock. I've never heard of it before. But the weird thing about it is the perpetrator lived with the corpses of the victims for at least 3 days. The murders are considered one of the most gruesome and puzzling unsolved crimes in German history. So 4 of the dead bodies that were found were stacked in the barn on the property. And the way it happened, they speculate, is that the victims were lured there one by one and killed off and then stacked in the barn. Prior to the actual murders, the family and the former maid were reporting weird things happening on the property. So there was a potential that this person was living in secret on the property and unintentionally scaring the family right before killing them. Okay. So they say that the strange occurrences in and around the Hinterkaifeck situation of attack were happening at least 6 months prior. So 6 months prior to the attack, the family's initial maid quits. It had been widely claimed that her reason for leaving was she heard strange sounds in the attic and believed the house to be haunted. So Andreas Gruber found a strange newspaper from Munich on the property in March of 1922. So one of the people who lived there. He couldn't remember buying it and initially believed the postman lost the newspaper. This was not the case, however, as no one in the vicinity subscribed to that specific newspaper. Okay. Days before the murders, Gruber told his neighbors he discovered tracks in the fresh snow that led from the forest to a broken door lock in the farm's machine room. Later during the night, they reported hearing footsteps in the attic, but Gruber found no one when he searched the building. Although he told several people about the alleged observations, he refused offers of help, and the details went unreported to the police. According to a school friend of one of the daughters, the young girl reported that her mother, Victoria, had fled the farm the night before the act after a violent quarrel and only hours later had been found in the forest. On the afternoon of March 31st, the new maid arrived at the farm. She was escorted there and was most likely the last person to see the inhabitants alive. It appears that late in the evening, the daughter of the family that lived there, as well as her parents, were also lured to the barn through the stable where they were murdered one at a time. The perpetrator used a mattock belonging to the family farm and killed the family with blows to the head. The perpetrator, or multiple, because they never knew who actually did it, then moved into the living quarters where, with the same murder weapon, he killed one of the kids that was sleeping in a bassinet. 4 days passed between the murders and the discovery of the bodies. On April 1st, coffee sellers arrived to Hinterkaifeck to take an order. When no one responded to knocks on the doors and the windows, they walked around the yard but didn't find anybody. They noticed that the gate to the machine house was open and decided to leave. The daughter was absent for school without excuse for several days, and when the family failed to show up for church, people started to get really suspicious. Okay. The weird thing about all this was that people had noticed that the animals were still being tended to, they were still being fed, and there was still smoke coming out of the chimney from the house. So whoever killed the family stayed at the household property, was still maintaining things before disappearing.
Oh, yeah, that's definitely someone who is native to that property. Yeah.
So the big problem too with this story is that at the time when this happened, people were in and off the property so much that everything got kind of fumbled as far as the investigation because unintentional tampering, there were too many people involved who interacted with the crime scene, the bodies were initially moved, items were moved, and they even noticed that there were cooked and eaten meals in the kitchen. Like there was just a lot going on. Now, they did say that evidence showed that the younger daughter, the one who was missing from school, had been alive for several hours after an initial assault because she had torn her hair out in tufts while lying in the straw in the barn with her deceased family. So there might have been some sort of fit of madness in there where she just ripped her own hair out.
Is it now Stephen King wrote, I don't know if it was just the screenplay or if it was the book, there's a movie called 1922. Do you know if that's connected or?
I do not.
Oh, well, anyways, yeah, this is one of the reasons why the cops always look to the family if the people got killed on the family's property. Because, what is it that, I guess there are two motives primarily that drive people to kill. One would be like financially if you're a hitman, and the other one is usually like revenge or something like that, some kind of really personal animus because to ignore the laws of the land and all the morals of the land and to kill, that's a big deal, and so it would have to be someone that you feel very strongly about who would drive you to do it. So it must have been someone in the family who did
well,
it.
and here's the thing too. So this is like the last little bit I have on it. So they first suspected it to possibly be a robbery. The police interrogated a lot of traveling people in and out of the area, craftsmen, vagrants, other people who lived in the surrounding villages, but they all abandoned the theory when a large amount of money was found in the house. So at that point, when they were like investigating the house, that's where they found that the people who did this actually stayed at the farm. That's when they realized that the cattle were being fed. There was an entire supply of bread that had been eaten from the kitchen. There was recently cut meat in a pantry. Like there was no clear motive just based on everything. And they had, the police did have suspects, but no murderer had ever been found that was actually linked to the case. The files were officially closed in 1955. The last interrogations about the Hinterkaifeck situation actually took place in 1986. So,
must have been someone in the family. Reminds me
over 30 years ago was when the last, actual attempts were made to try and solve this.
Reminds me of
60 years after.
Reminds me of a case, I think it was in New York City. It's unsolved. So it involved these Hasidim, and So there were all these Hasidic guys who lived in a dorm situation, and one of them killed another one of them. And it was interesting because when the guy was murdered, certain death rites were carried out that are part of that culture, but they would not cooperate with the police when the police got wind of it. So all these guys, I think they all, at least one of them knows who committed the murder, but they won't tell the police who did it. So sometimes these murders happen in these close-knit clans, you know.
Mm-hmm.
There's something about people living in groups like that don't communicate with the outside world where terrible things often end up happening. So, I mean, obviously that's not a cult, but families who live in isolated rural areas like that can sometimes function like a cult, where the leader kind of becomes a tyrant and people can react against that quite strongly. So,
Absolutely.
Yeah, I guess that one's never going to be solved. All right, so my next story is out of Amarillo, Texas. So on October 31st, Halloween 1981, 76-year-old nun Sister Tadea Benz was raped and strangled in her convent. On November 9th, Johnny Frank Garrett, who lived across the street from her, was arrested for the abominable crime. On February 11th, 1992, he was executed via lethal injection by the state of Texas. Garrett's final meal was ice cream. His final words were, "I'd like to thank my family for loving me and taking care of me, and the rest of the world can kiss my ass." He stole John Wayne Gacy's last words. Since his execution, there have been various doubts raised surrounding his guilt. Increasingly, many people believe that Johnny was innocent. Not that that helps Johnny now, of course. All right, so what's your next story?
I feel like mine are all like really long compared to yours.
Yeah, I know I should have chosen longer stories.
So this is a good one. Did you ever hear about the Axeman of New Orleans?
I have not.
I love it. I'm sharing all the good ones. All right. So the Axeman of New Orleans, this was actually referenced in one of the earlier seasons of American Horror Story. So if you ever watch that show, there's like a quick little blurb about him in it. And it was funny because I instantly like flipped out when I saw it initially. All right, so Axeman of New Orleans was an unidentified American serial killer active in New Orleans, Louisiana, and surrounding communities from May of 1918 to October of 1919. Press reports during the height of the public panic about the killings mentioned similar murders as early as 1911, but recent researchers have called these reports into question. The Axeman was never identified. The murders remain unsolved. As the killer's epithet implies, the victims were usually attacked with an axe which belonged to the victims themselves. In most cases, a panel on a back door of a home was removed by a chisel, which along with the panel was left on the floor near the door. The intruder would then attack one or more of the residents with either an axe or a straight razor. The crimes were not motivated by robbery, and the perpetrator never removed items from his victims' homes. The majority of the victims were Italian immigrants or Italian Americans, leading many to believe that the crimes were ethnically motivated. Media outlets sensationalized this aspect of the crimes and even suggested mafia involvement despite lack of evidence. Some crime analysts have suggested that the killings were related to intercourse and that the murderer was perhaps a sadist, specifically seeking female victims. Criminologists Colin and Damon Wilson hypothesized that the Axeman killed male victims only when they obstructed his attempts to murder women, which is supported by cases in which the woman of the household was murdered but not the man. A less plausible theory is that the killer committed the murders in an attempt to promote jazz music, suggested by a letter attributed to the killer in which he stated he would spare the lives of those who played jazz in their homes. So this is what one of the letters says. Okay, and it starts with like the location and the date, which he says is hell, March 13th, 1919. Esteemed mortal, they have never caught me and they never will. They have never seen me, for I am invisible, even as the ether that surrounds your earth. I am not a human being, but a spirit and a demon from the hottest hell. I am what you Orleanians and your foolish police call the Axeman. When I see fit, I shall come and claim other victims. I alone know whom they shall be. I shall leave no clue except my bloody axe, besmeared with blood and brains of he whom I have sent below to keep me company. If you wish, you may tell the police to be careful not to rile me. Of course, I am a reasonable spirit. I take no offense at the way they have conducted their investigations in the past. In fact, they have been so utterly stupid as to not only amuse me, but His Satanic Majesty, and then it like had some weird stuff, but to tell them to beware. Let them not try to discover what I am, for it were better if they were never born than to incur the wrath of the Axeman. I don't think there is any need of such a warning, for I feel sure the police will always dodge me as they have in the past. They are wise and know how to keep away from all harm. Undoubtedly, you Orleanians think of me as a most horrible murderer, which I am, but I could be much worse if I wanted to. If I wished, I could pay a visit to your city every night. At will, I could slay thousands of your best citizens, for I am in close relationship with the angel of death. Now, to be exact, at 12:15 earthly time on next Tuesday night, I am going to pass over New Orleans. In my infinite mercy, I am going to make a little proposition to you people. Here it is. I am very fond of jazz music, and I swear by all the devils in the nether regions that every person shall be spared in whose home a jazz band is in full swing at the time I have just mentioned. If everyone has a jazz band going, well then, so much the better for you people. One thing is certain, and that is that some of you people who do not jazz it out on that specific Tuesday night will get the axe. Well, as I am cold and crave the warmth of my native Tartarus, it is about time I leave your earthly home. I will cease my discourse, hoping that thou wilt publish this, that it may go well with thee. I have been and will be the most spirit that ever existed, either in fact or realm of fantasy. How trippy is that?
Yeah, that must have been when the real golden age of the serial killer began, because these guys had personality, you know.
Well, and then after that, everything just stopped. He didn't commit any more crimes after that. Like, it was ridiculous. Never caught, never identified, no freaking idea who he was. They said that that night, all of New Orleans dance halls were filled to capacity. Professional, amateur bands, anywhere people could obtain jazz music was going, because he legitimately terrified the entire community. Can you imagine? Like,
just so that people will play your favorite music.
And so creepy. It's just so weird.
It must have been.
I love the letter though. This guy was like inspired by Poe. He had to have been.
And how shitty it must have been for people who hated jazz. It's like
really, this is what I'm gonna end over.
Yeah. You better get yourself some earplugs, because no one's taking any chances. See, I think it must have that golden age must have ended with BTK, because he signed his own arrest warrant when he sent all those communications to the cops. Mm-hmm. So now every serial killer knows, don't start sending messages to the media and to the police.
He was sending it on floppy disks, wasn't he? Isn't that how he got busted? Because of all the encryption shit that goes on there with all the time stamping and everything, like.
The metadata, Dennis.
Because the cops lied to him. They're like, oh no, that doesn't do that. So then he believed them. Like.
Yeah. His
hubris got the best of him.
He'd be a free man to this day if he hadn't done that,
Isn't that scary? So scary. Yeah. People are so creepy. Ugh.
Yeah. If I started killing people, I wouldn't tell anyone about it. Nobody. But I couldn't get away with it because there's cameras in my building. I think you have to live in a house to get away with it. They could track, he left the building at this hour, Whereas you could totally get away with it.
I mean, we still have serial killers out there.
Oh yeah, there's thousands of them, they say.
And the cameras don't even matter, because the whole Cecil Hotel thing. The girl who went missing in the hotel and they saw her on the elevator acting erratically.
Oh, the Asian girl?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, that was weird, eh? And then she just disappeared. No one has a clue how she disappeared. And
Well, no, they found her body. She was in like a water
she was
tank
in a
coming out of the
dumpster.
building.
Oh yeah.
Because then her body decomposing in there was causing the actual water in the building that people were showering in and everything to get all gross and fucky and yeah.
Yeah, that was a weird case. They never figured that out, eh?
No, they haven't.
All right. So I'm mean, onwards to my next story. Number 2. So Penn State. So something else bad happened at Penn State. Only this one involved death. Penn State grad student Cindy Song disappeared after leaving a party on Halloween night 2001. She'd been dropped off at her apartment and had gone inside, but nobody saw her after that, and no trace of her has ever been found. The case has taken a number of bizarre twists, and for a while, the investigation focused on a man named Hugo Marcus Selensky. So this is kind of like along the same vein of what you were just talking about. Selensky had been arrested after 5 corpses were found in his backyard. A police informant linked Selensky and another man to Cindy, claiming the duo had kidnapped, raped, and murdered her. To make things even weirder, the other man named in the kidnapping was found dead in Selensky's backyard. More bodies have been found there, but none have been proven to be Cindy, and the case remains open. So I wonder why that is. Maybe they've deteriorated to the point where it's hard to prove their identity. Unless they do it with dental records. But if they don't know who you are, how are they going to know who your dentist is?
Well, and how do we know that you even went to a dentist to have those kinds of records on file?
Yeah. Is everyone's teeth unique?
Yes.
Oh,
usually.
Just like your
just
fingerprint.
Because wear and tear, on teeth, based on, I mean, as far as I'm aware of it, teeth are extremely unique just because bite impressions and like just the way they form, if you don't have straight teeth, it's a whole thing. I have a friend who's a dental hygienist. I should have asked her about this.
That must be exciting, eh? Can you imagine being a dentist? I know they make good money, but
I wanted to when I was 5.
Oh, you
but
did?
it
Really?
never came to fruition. There's so much gross with the human mouth. I can't. I just can't.
Well, there is, but it must be like a boring profession too, right?
No.
And-
No, there's a lot. Like I've heard some things. Speaking of mouths, while we're on the subject before I start my next story, going back to our last situation, where is it? About spitting.
Oh yeah, spitting as a manner of
I looked
assault.
it up. Okay. The internet's great, guys. So spitting on someone as a deliberate act, and if the victim is reasonably fearful of being harmed, can be considered an assault.
Yeah, I guess. Well, during COVID, I'll bet that was probably escalated to a serious form of assault. Because if you got spat on by someone who had COVID,
right,
that probably would have given you COVID, right? Especially in the face.
Oh, I would imagine. Ugh. It says, for instance, spitting at someone can be seen as a battery so long as the spit makes contact with the person. When a spit does not come in contact with the person, but there was clear intent to spit at someone, the act can be considered assault. So that guy spit through a screen door, right?
Yeah, right through a screen door. I don't know how. Well, yeah, I guess you could do that, if it was.
So, I mean, depending on the intention, it's one thing to spit on the house and just be like, screw your house. But if you're aiming to spit on someone, that can be considered. Yes. So there you go.
It's kind of lame to tell the cops on someone because they spat on you, but she was a woman. I guess she kind of got a pass on that. But if a guy told the police, that would look really lame. He spat on me. Yeah.
I mean, it's so fucking gross. Like, no, thank you.
And I'm wondering
So
too, they say dentistry has like one of the highest suicide rates of all the professions. I'm
it's
wondering why
very high stress. It's very high stress.
people are dreading it. Like that, not everyone reacts like Rory. Yay! Was that the,
She just likes getting toys after getting a
oh,
cleaning.
is that
That's
what
all
it
she
was?
likes. She's very incentivized. Um, Whereas I'm just like, I want to keep my teeth healthy because, you know,
I hate going to the dentist.
I
I
love going to the dentist. It's like a
do.
spa day for my mouth. I've invested so much money into braces and gum grafts and teeth pulling and everything because I was so self-conscious of these monstrous things that, yeah, I was like, this will make me an adult.
Well, yeah, I guess. I mean, what I would like to do is get implants. They're hugely expensive. Like every one of them is like $4,000 or something.
Yeah.
But you
Uh-huh.
don't have to brush your teeth ever again. You just and then,
Bullshit, you still have to take care of that stuff.
yeah, I know. But if I had the money, I'd get all implants. Yeah, and they,
You still have to brush them. You still have to take care of them though.
you have to take care of implants. Well, that's a
Yeah.
ripoff. What are they gonna do? Rust? What do they have rusty teeth?
No, but you're gonna eat food and it's gonna have fucking dye and garbage and bacteria and shit in it.
Well, you could probably just gargle. You could probably just do that.
I
Wouldn't
think you should research it and then let me know if it's worth it.
and they screw them into your gums, which is probably not a nice feeling. But again, it's temporary, right?
Do you think they see that when they scan you at the airport? It's just
I
like,
don't know.
like
Yeah,
you look like a saw contraption on the inside.
that
It's
and
like,
like
oh
metal
shit.
plates. Yeah, that and like metal plates. I wonder if they pick them up on the metal detector.
That would suck. I'd feel so bad.
Very
Like
self-conscious.
it's just my fucking hip, man. I'm sorry. Like I'm half machine.
Yeah, well,
If we
that's
ever become mech suits, like we're in trouble.
no,
Just,
I think we're facing a Darth Vader future. I think people are going to have like full robot parts, and they're
if it
already
means no pain,
well,
let's do it.
there are already partially computerized like fake limbs, like the
I've
next
seen the controlled arms where it's like it's muscle control, but it's robotic, and if the battery
oh yeah,
dies, it like locks up. It's not fun.
and they've come up with eyes, robotic eyes. I mean, it's like a black and white 1994 security cam, but they'll get better. They're going
I
to come up
mean,
with all kinds of shit.
it's like Repo the Genetic Opera, man.
Oh yeah,
We are living in the future.
yep, you're gonna have robotic limbs. Okay.
Gonna run faster and jump higher. All right.
Hold on. So you're up next?
Yes.
Okay.
So my third story is known as, it's got multiple names, and I did not know it before I researched it. It's called the Servant Girl Annihilator, also known as the Austin Axe Murderer and the Midnight Assassin, which was an unidentified American serial killer who actually preyed upon the city of Austin, Texas in 1884 and 1885. There were a series of 8 axe murders referred to by contemporary sources as the Servant Girl murders. A 1985 issue of the New York Times reported the murders were committed by some cunning madman who is insane on the subject of killing women. The murders represented an early example of serial killers operating in the United States, and this occurred 3 years prior to Jack the Ripper and his attack on, Whitechapel. Okay. According to an author about Jack the Ripper, there's conjecture that the Texas Killer and Jack the Ripper were the same person. So, based on everything that they knew, so with the Texas situation, the killer murdered 7 women, 5 black, 2 white, and 1 black man. Additionally, the killer seriously injured 6 women and 2 men. All the victims were attacked indoors while they were asleep in their beds. 5 of the women were dragged unconscious, but still alive, and killed outdoors. 3 of the women were severely mutilated while outdoors. All of the victims were posed in a similar manner. 6 of the murdered women had a sharp object inserted into their ears. The series of murders ended with the killing of 2 white women. One was 17, who was attacked while sleeping in her bed, and then her 16-year-old daughter, which both happened right before Christmas in 1885. Only one person was arrested and convicted. He was found guilty of murdering his wife, but the conviction was later overturned. London authorities questioned several American cowboys, one of whom, according to authors of Jack the Ripper A to Z, was possibly Buck Taylor, who was also a performer in Buffalo Bill's Wild West show. Taylor was born in Fredericksburg, Texas, which was 70 miles west of Austin. According to a front-page article in the New York Times in 1885, 400 men were arrested during the course of the year. According to the Texas Monthly, powerful elected officials refused to believe that one man or one group of men were responsible for all the murders. The African American community and some practitioners of voodoo believed the killer was a white man who had magic powers that enabled him to become invisible, as no dogs outside or in the fenced yards adjacent to the locations where the murders happened were barking or trying to raise any alarms. They were just completely calm. The series of murders stopped when an additional police officers were hired to investigate. Rewards were offered and citizens formed a vigilante committee to patrol the streets at night. Contemporary newspapers reported that the murderer or murderers apparently fled the area, as no more murders were officially attributed to the killers by authorities. So
I wonder if that might have been a contributing influence to the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, you know?
I don't know.
Because I think Ed Gein was one of the influences, though he's not from Texas.
Yes, I've heard that, but yeah, I'm not sure.
But maybe it's something about the heat, because I was there in summer in 2022 for a podcast festival, and it is intense, you know?
Yeah, I've been to Austin one time, and I went in May. I think it was May, and it was already 90 degrees, and the humidity was damn near 100%. It was just ucky.
Yeah.
I mean, you get used to it when you live in it, but for someone like Ohio is very dry. Like, our humidity is nothing compared. It was like swampy, and it was gross. So,
Yeah.
it's insane.
Wow. So, yeah, they're getting better at catching serial killers nowadays, which kind of reinforces my theory. Like, maybe, I don't know, maybe it would impinge on everyone's freedom, but what if law enforcement had everyone's DNA on file, you know?
How do we know they don't?
Well, yeah, that's one thing. But
I mean, I know my fingerprints are on file just because of the types of jobs I've worked over the years.
well, there you go. Yeah, they probably have been taken by the
And
government.
how do I know that, when I go to the doctors and I have to get blood drawn for labs, that
Yeah,
just
right.
doesn't get automatically sent? I mean, and then we have genealogy databases that the authorities can access that information too. I mean,
Yeah,
you could have asked me.
yeah, Ancestry.com has my information on file.
Yeah, exactly.
So you're a government employee, right? So you've had to give.
Not right now, no. I work for a nonprofit.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So I don't work for the state.
Oh, but you get funding from the state, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So that must come with strings attached.
I usually don't see it because I'm one of the grunt workers. So
Yeah.
I'm not involved in the back end, with the grants and stuff like that. But yeah, there's definitely, when you go for that type of funding, you have to write proposals for the grants and stuff like that. And yes, there are stipulations that have to be fulfilled, and there are certain ways to go about obtaining the funds, and but I mean, we've always been very successful. The place I work at now is a very big, important part of the community. So we usually don't have any issues that I've ever been aware of. So I keep doing my job. I keep chugging along, visiting and being a guest speaker with the kids, and just keep it going.
Yeah, I remember when Barack Obama was running for president, and all these people were saying he was born in Kenya because of his father being from Kenya. But it's like, you think the government can't find out if he was born in the United States? You really don't think the long arm of the law can't reach that far? Come on.
Right.
Of course, they don't object to the idea of Ted Cruz being president. He was born in Canada.
A lot of people think Ted Cruz is the Zodiac killer.
Yeah. Some people think he's the Antichrist.
I saw a bumper sticker one time that said something along the lines of like, it's something about him eating children, and it was great. It was a good time.
Well, not to get too political, but actually the person that I heard say referred to him as the Antichrist was actually a Republican. Like they've worked with him and they hate him. So that's not a good sign when someone in your own party says something like that.
Yeah, that's great. It's fine. America's doing great.
You
We're
you
just,
you, you can have him. You can have him.
I don't
Take
know.
Ted Cruz from us.
No.
All right, so my last story here is on the night before Halloween in 1975, 15-year-old Martha Moxley went to a costume party. But the next morning, her dead body was discovered in the backyard of her Connecticut home. She'd been beaten to death with a golf club. The murder mystery seemed to come to an end in 2000 when Michael Skakel, I think this was a big story, I recall, who was also 15 at the time, was convicted for the killing. But Skakel maintained his innocence, and in May of 2018, the Connecticut Supreme Court vacated his conviction. Moxley's murder is still a mystery. Well, it's a good night to commit murder, I guess. I mean, there's all kinds of suspicious people around, people with fake blood on their clothing. So it's a good time to kill someone for real and walk around with
Hiding
rubber
in
balloon
plain sight. Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you ever watch The Office?
Oh yeah, I've watched.
The Halloween episode where Creed comes to work with that blood-stained shirt.
Yeah, do you think he may have actually committed murder? Because that you kept talking about killing people and.
Oh no, his whole thing was he came in and he had the blood on his shirt, and everyone's
Oh,
like, "Oh, cool costume, Creed, happy Halloween." He's like, "It's Halloween." Like,
see, I always had this fan theory that he is like a
Creed
serial
was
killer. He's a serial killer, and Toby kept telling these stories.
no,
He was right.
Toby was the Scranton Strangler.
You think he was
Yes.
Strangler? Oh, okay.
Absolutely. Oh my God. Yeah, that theory cracks me up because I can totally see it. I can see it. Toby was just Toby. The Creed was like,
He was just nuts. You think?
well, he was such a good criminal because he got into everything. He was just this ultimate shyster, and he just pulled fast ones on everyone, and he was just mayhem. And I absolutely love his character because he's also so like senile, or he at least played it off that he was senile. So there's this whole double-edged thing. But I mean, I have no idea. Creed's a wild card.
Yeah.
Don't know. But
Yeah.
I hate when murders and stuff happen around Halloween, and then it's just like, they say that you walk past so many serial killers in your life and you don't even know it, and it's like,
Well, I mean, they have to go through a lot of trouble to appear normal, so I guess you wouldn't pick up on it really. Like I've met people who seem like they could be serial killers, but I never heard tell of them murdering anybody. So I guess it really is usually the person who seems like they could never be capable of it.
says the man who does a murder podcast series.
Yeah, right.
Hiding in plain sight, Morgan.
Well, yeah, I mean, the police tracked down Dennis Rader through his church. He was a church-going man, employed. Oh, I love that. I love my favorite part of that whole story is how he worked for ADT installing burglar alarms for people who wanted to protect themselves against the TK killer, and there he is in their living room installing it in front of them.
How terrified do you think those people were when they realized it was him?
Yeah, really.
And he was in their house, like.
Oh, if you ever thought about reading his daughter's book, don't. That was disappointing because it's almost more about her than about him, and she's not that interesting. So, I mean, she's not. I mean, it was interesting. I mean, it was interesting to hear someone talk about how, like, imagine your fucking father turned out to be a serial killer. Like, it was horrifying for her, of course, and there were these stupid people who accused the family of being aware of it and enabling them somehow.
Like, well, how did you not know?
Well, no. Well, why would he tell them, right? So.
Well, it's like, back in the day, it was a lot easier to just disappear for a while, and then everyone had to take your word for where you were.
Yeah.
I was just talking about this earlier with my friend. Back in the 90s and early 2000s, we could say we were going to a friend's house, but they didn't know if we walked to the park. They didn't know if we went to the store. They just had to take it at face value.
You know,
It's a lot harder to get away with that now, which is probably why serial killers get caught more often now because of technology and everything else. And
yeah, like Uber keeps promoting this thing now, Uber for like teenagers. You know, get into special accounts so your teens can be chauffeured around. But it
no,
would,
thank you. That
well,
sounds like
it would be a good idea for your daughter, though, right? Because women are
no.
more the target of violence than men, you know?
Kid Uber sounds like an easy way to traffic kids.
Yeah, maybe. Or you're going to end up spending a lot of money on Uber for kids.
Yeah, no,
It's going to
my
cost.
car works fine. No, thank you. Rory's not about the strangers. She's just, no, she's too fearful. She knows she's not going to get kidnapped. No way.
Well, that's good then. Yeah.
Yeah, no. I will be her Uber driver until she learns to drive, which I'm all right with.
I think I would have been a really irritating kidnapping victim. Probably the kidnapper would have just taken me back to my mother's place voluntarily, like taken.
That's funny.
I was not a very compliant child.
I complained a lot the day I was missing, but it didn't stop them. I cried.
Did your parents get that girl held? Did your parents tell her off? Or?
We talked about this before, years ago.
Yeah, I
remember?
I don't remember what your parents did. Did they?
They were given an option to press charges, and they decided not to because she was 16. Literally happened on her 16th birthday. And she was just a fucking idiot. She made shit choices, a lot of them, and it just all happened to be in the same day, and dragged me along with it. It was just a fucking shit circumstance. I was not hurt. You know, they did not put my life in immediate danger. There was no weapons. I was not assaulted. You know, they didn't force me to drink alcohol or do drugs. I walked around town all flipping day. Like, I was just physically exhausted because I got my steps in for the entire summer in one day.
Yeah.
Other than that, I was fine. I was just really hungry. I was really bitchy. It was hot out. I was tired. I just wanted to go home. I knew I was going to be in trouble. I didn't want to deal with mom and dad yelling at me. So she got in trouble enough through her family, and she wasn't allowed back in the town that I lived in, as far as I know.
Wow.
While I lived there, she was kind of like banned. That was the extent of it. But
exile. Yeah.
No, yeah, basically, she was exiled from the suburbs. I don't know whatever happened to her. I still wonder about it sometimes. I'm like, I wonder what happened. Like,
well, I would say she probably learned her lesson.
I would hope. I don't know.
No idea. How about we go out? What's like the greatest costume you ever wore on Halloween?
The greatest? That's a good question. I'm not sure. Give me a moment to think on that because I have one last story for us.
My favorite was the one I wore last year. I was Donald Trump. It didn't say his name on the package though, but I had the hat and the wig and everything. Yeah, I suppose he would have sued if he had known that they modeled it after him. But what I want to do is my incompetent surgeon costume, and I still haven't been able to do it. But I would wear like surgical scrubs and like put fake blood all the way up and down, you know, like drenched with fake blood. But then again, I'd have to be invited to some kind of function in order to do this. I'm not just going to do it at home, but like a triple bypass that went awry.
So, trying to think. Favorite costume. I've worn some good ones back in the day. Little kid me had some awesome fucking costumes. I was a Pink Ranger. One year I was a Crypt Keeper. I would say my favorite costume I wore would be Sam from Trick or Treat, which I still have. I wore it on the podcast the one year we did the Papo Halloween.
You've never done the sexy cat, right?
No.
No. 90% of the female gender does that costume, but I figure you'd be too smart for that one.
Not my style. I would rather go full like Deadpool or a stormtrooper, something where there's full anonymity, no one knows it's me, so I can just fuck with people and just be as weird and stupid as possible, make people laugh, and then just disappear. No one knows it's me.
Well, you have a history of with cosplay, right?
Yes, I've done cosplay. I've never done like full-blown cosplay like that.
You're not a furry.
No, 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 thank you. I've worn a stormtrooper outfit one time when I worked security for a convention, and they called me Pocket Trooper because I was so short.
Oh, yeah.
And that's my favorite. It was my favorite. I loved it.
Luke Skywalker was a short stormtrooper, right? So that counts.
No, I was Pocket Trooper. I love that name. That was like my favorite thing ever. And then my favorite cosplay I've done, I went as Lady from Devil May Cry 3. And her costume was just epitome of badass. She was my favorite character. She was just so cool.
Are you a big fan of horror movies in general?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Is there one that like hardly anyone ever talks about, but you were always a big fan of it? Feel like it deserves more press?
This is a loaded question. Yes, there's many.
For me, it's Poltergeist 3 because I thought it was really, for me, it was a really interesting concept because it takes place in a condo, and I don't know if anyone had ever
the condo building in Chicago, yeah.
Yeah, it was a haunted condo, and I thought the special effects were done really well.
The condo building wasn't haunted though; it was the little girl, Carol Ann.
Yeah,
that made me sad because it did not have a good ending. I was very sad for her.
Oh yeah, it's very grim. Like even the way they decorated the sets, everything's fucking gray.
Yeah.
It's a dark movie. It's a horror movie, right? So.
Yes.
Yeah. Is that the one where the actress died? The girl who played her died.
Heather O'Rourke. Yeah. She passed away. I think either at the end of production or right after. Somewhere because it was an undiagnosed, I think, kidney or liver disease or something.
Something like that.
Which is really sad.
I didn't enjoy the second movie in that series as much, though. That old guy.
The old man. Oh God, he's so creepy. Oh, that man still freaks me out. Movies though that I don't think get enough credit. Wes Craven's New Nightmare, the one that came out in the 90s.
I saw that one. Yeah, that was
because that broke the fucking fourth wall before anyone else started doing it. It was so ahead of its time. And as a kid, I didn't really like grasp it. I was like, what the fuck, is Freddy real? Is he not real? And then like as I got older, I was like, oh my God, like that's really cool. Like I really enjoyed that one.
I love The Shining because a lot of it is just psychological horror and it works. Yeah.
I'm trying to think. What's some other good one? I love a lot of like Creep Show, the original Creep Show. It's like my fucking favorite. It's just so campy. It's so cheesy, but it's really well done. I love the practical effects. The one I never hear people talk about is The Changeling from the 70s.
Yeah.
And it's have you seen it?
I haven't seen it, no. I know I've heard of.
Yeah, it was ahead of its time for like a haunted house movie. And then there was like all this like it kind of reminds me of what Del Toro did with The Orphanage. If you've ever seen that.
No, I haven't seen that one. There's a lot of horror movies I haven't seen. I love A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3.
That's the Dream. That's not the Dream
Warriors.
Dream Warriors, because then it's Dream Masters. The Dream Child also doesn't get enough love. The fifth one. That little kid was weird. Ginger Snaps.
I haven't seen that one.
What the fuck? That's in your fucking area. That's one of those Canadian ones that you would have loved that movie.
There's a lot of horror movies I haven't seen. It's true.
You need to get on it. What else? You know what movie gets a lot of crap because everyone says it's bad and it makes me really mad?
Which one?
Dreamcatcher.
Dreamcatcher?
The one with that Stephen King wrote about the aliens in like the snowy area.
Oh yeah, so that one got bad reviews.
Yes, I love that movie, and everyone shits on it. It makes me so mad. There's way worse movies out there.
Well, horror movies get very little respect most of the time, so this is the way it goes. It's a miracle if a horror movie gets a good review.
True.
But I love The Omen. I like The Exorcist, those 70s horror movies. For some reason,
The Exorcist, the spider walk.
I
can't. That freaks me out. I can't watch it. Oh God.
They loved making horror movies about like evil demonic kids back then. Like Firestarter. I love Firestarter with Drew Barrymore. That was a great movie.
Cat's Eye.
Yeah.
I don't have a problem with the kid aspect. It's just that spider crawl. It's so unnatural and it's so unnerving. And then the way they shot it and she just comes down so fast, I can't like that just freaks me out. That's like a core memory.
One thing that's been disappointing is how they just haven't made any really good movies about the real life serial killers. They just never. Well, I mean, I haven't watched that whole series about Jeffrey Dahmer. I heard it was good. But
the one on Netflix?
Yeah, but it's not. Is it gory? Is it graphic? I only watched some of the first episode.
Is it bad? I don't remember. I watched it last summer.
Yeah.
Oh no.
I don't know. I just find they tend not to go into a lot of graphic detail. Like Ted Bundy did some really fucked up shit with women's corpses, but they never go into that on the TV shows or the movies.
Like, I know with the Dahmer one, I remember they were going into a lot of his past stuff, and the fact that Evan Peters played him, you know, everyone already thinks he's like some heartthrob. Like, it like glamorized and sexualized a serial killer, and everyone like who still families are impacted by that story were very upset because like it doesn't matter how bad of the things he was doing. It was just the fact that the person portraying him, even though he did a good job acting, in my opinion, like they're just like, no, it takes away from it.
Yeah.
Because we know who this guy is and everyone thinks he's hot and blah, blah, blah. But I'm trying to think of some other movies that don't get enough praise and love. You know what I hate, though? The first Halloween movie was solid.
Yeah.
There was no reason for me that I thought they should have to give him a backstory.
Yeah.
Like they did with Curse of Michael Myers and all that. Like, why not just let him be evil? He is evil, like, personified.
Yeah,
why not just let him be that evil lurking in the shadows that could pop up at any time? And, you know, why does it have to always be something? There has to be a backstory. There does not need to be a backstory.
Yeah, like the great thing about the Friday the 13th movies is that they maintained the mystique of Jason. You know what I mean?
After the first one, because his mom did all the spoiler alert. Sorry, guys, it's only been 40, 50 years, but yeah, like there doesn't need to be, because Rob Zombie, when he redid the Halloween movies, like, yeah, they were good in their own way, but I was okay not having a backstory because we all know how, you know, there should have been signs he was doing this and that. Like, no, just why can't he just be fucking evil?
Actually, and the backstory actually makes little sense to me. I'm still like, okay, so why was he so pissed off? And like I'm still trying to figure out what
it was the cliche abusive household, you know, dad's drunk, mom's doing her best, no one's there to pay attention to him, no one cares about anyone else. Like it felt like it was just pulling at all of the, you know, true crime shit that we do on a daily basis, where it's like, there should have been signs. There's a sign. There's a sign. Oh, now he's abusing animals because he's not going to eventually escalate this, you know? So.
Well, I was listening back to because we were talking about the Eddie Lee Sexton story last time, and today I was listening to that episode, and I mean, I'm surprised one of those kids didn't end up being a serial killer. I mean, they did kill at Eddie's behest, but I'm surprised one of them didn't end up becoming a complete lunatic and going on a killing spree, considering they had him as a father. But Michael Myers didn't come from that background, you know?
No, he was from the suburbs. But I mean, the suburbs are fucked up in their own ways too. So.
Oh yeah. So who are the big criminals from Ohio besides Eddie Lee Sexton?
That's a very good question.
I'm not sure. There must. I know there are a lot of notable figures from Ohio, like a lot of
I
astronauts.
know the more recent one that happened by me was Sean Gray.
Sean Gray, yeah.
But other than that, I would have to do some research. Part of me wonders if I even want to know, like.
It's not apropos, but isn't it true that most of the original astronauts are from Ohio?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, like the guys who
They
went.
hate it so bad they had to leave our atmosphere.
They
They
hated
didn't want to
Ohio.
be anywhere near it. They're like, no, thank you. I'll take my chances in space.
Hey, look, there's Ohio. No, I'll wait until it turns around. Yeah.
As soon as you cross the border into a different state, there's just this air of relief. We crossed the bridge today going into West Virginia. We're just like, freedom.
Well, my initial impressions of Ohio weren't good because I saw Heathers, and Heathers didn't portray Ohio very well.
It was also the 80s. It was a totally different time.
Oh,
I can't speak for Ohio in the 80s. I wasn't here. Can't speak for
Yeah.
Ohio in the 90s. Wasn't here.
Well, you were there for 2 years, but you wouldn't remember those years. So.
No, I moved here in 2003.
Oh, really? Oh, okay.
Yeah, because I'm from Illinois. I lived in the suburbs through my freshman year of high school, and then I moved here, and I've been here ever since.
Are all the houses in the Illinois suburbs as big as Ferris Bueller's house?
No, fuck that. That is inaccurate. The houses are very cookie cutter. They're decent sized, but no. The McAllister and the Bueller houses, those are the bougie people who lived in probably like, oh, where was it? There's a couple different affluent neighborhoods in Chicago, and then there was, oh God, Lake Zurich is an area outside where they actually have like Cuba Road, which is like their spooky thing. But the Lake Zurich area is where all those Richie houses are. Not the ones you see in the movies, but that would be similar. I know there's more. I just can't think of the names offhand. So for any of our Illinois listeners, please do not pass too much judgment on me.
There's a fan theory about Ferris Bueller's Day Off that Ferris Bueller is a figment of Cameron's imagination. And I've really given this a lot of thought, too. So he's not even in high school, Cameron. And they don't show him at school, right? And my theory is that his mother died and that totally destroyed him and his father. And they're totally out of touch with each other. And he says to Ferris, Ferris asks him, where's your mother? And he says, she's in Decatur. He didn't explain what that meant. But I'm thinking maybe that's where she was buried because that's where her family's burial plot is. And that he's just been like rotting inside his house for years. And then this figure of his imagination, Ferris Bueller, motivates him to get out of bed and go live life again. Yeah, because there's this scene where he's like daring himself to go in his car, his shitty car.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He starts acting really weird, and his father pays more attention to his cars than he does to him, and everything involving a car in the movie somehow has a run of bad luck or turns out in a bad way. So yeah, that's my theory about Ferris Bueller's Day Off. It's really about Cameron. It's like Fight Club, basically.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah. Well, on that note, we're at an hour, 13 minutes. Well, thank you very much for joining me again this week. This has been Morgan Rector, Michelle Gower, and happy Halloween.
Yes, keep it spooky.
Take care.